Awakening from the maze of anxiety, a journey back to yourself. There is a feeling you've likely experienced, maybe even right now. In this very moment, a vague, nameless unease. It isn't the sharp fear of standing at the edge of a cliff. It isn't the specific worry before an exam or an interview. It's the tightness in your chest, the tension in your shoulders and neck, the heaviness in each breath, even when everything around you seems fine. You call it stress. You blame your work, your family, your circumstances, but deep down, you know something else is operating in the shadows, something that doesn't come from outside, but hides within, weaving itself into every decision, every action, every repetitive thought that loops through your day. That is anxiety, but not the kind you usually hear about. Not sudden panic attacks, not nightmares that jolt you awake. It's the background anxiety, persistent, insidious, quietly becoming the undercurrent of your life. It shows up when you procrastinate on making a call, delete a message you've written, avoid moments of stillness. It drives you to stay busier than necessary, to think more than needed, to try controlling everything, just to reassure yourself that you are okay. But what is the price of that fragile sense of okay? It's the growing distance from your own body, the neglect of your inner signals. It's wearing so many masks for so long that you forget the face beneath them. Anxiety isn't just an emotion, it's a defense system, nourished by fear, fed by the need for control, masked by false busyness, and it will continue to steer you, binding you in a seemingly rational loop until you pause and ask yourself, what am I really living for? Who am I beneath this mask? This journey isn't about eliminating anxiety. It's about facing it, listening to it, and walking through it so that you can return home to yourself. 1. Fear is learned, when anxiety is not instinct but something nurtured. No one is born afraid of others' gaze. No one is inherently anxious when facing difficult decisions. Newborns do not fear judgment. Do not worry about right or wrong. Do not think about failure or success. Fear, at least the subtle, persistent kind that suffocates our minds daily, is not instinctual. It is something nurtured over the years, quietly seeping into every thought cell, becoming part of how we perceive the world, and more importantly, how we perceive ourselves. Have you ever wondered why, as a child, you could run freely, speak your mind with sincerity, without fear of judgment, yet over time, an unease crept in whenever you were about to speak your truth? Whenever you prepared to act differently from what others expected, that natural freedom did not disappear, it was suppressed, and the force tightening its grip was fear, the very thing you were taught and trained to carry. Fear, the legacy of society and its expectations. From childhood, we are conditioned to become the version society desires. You must behave to be loved. You must excel to be recognized. You must hide your true feelings to avoid being hurt. Each time you cried and were told, "Don't cry anymore." Each time you failed and received that look of disappointment. Each time you tried something new and were ridiculed, the seeds of fear were planted. The fear of rejection, the fear of getting hurt, the fear of not being good enough. And so, you learn to adjust yourself. Say the safe things, do the acceptable things, hide your truest self to fit the mold. From survival instinct to emotional domestication, there is a truth. Fear serves a survival function. It alerts you to danger, helps you avoid threats, but that fear is short-term, clear-cut, like when you avoid a wild animal or sidestep immediate danger. What we're talking about here is a distorted form of fear, fear that has been socialized, attached to harmless situations but linked with feelings of judgment and hurt. The fear of rejection at work, the fear of saying the wrong thing in a conversation, the fear of expressing yourself in what you truly love. These fears are not natural reactions to real threats, but rather the result of an invisible yet persistent training from the environment around you. Anxiety, a subtle fear sustained by habit. You gradually get used to reviewing your words over and over before speaking. You get used to hesitating before making a new choice. You get used to choosing the safe path, even when your heart longs for something different. Every small habit reinforces fear, nurtures anxiety, pulling you further away from your true self. Each time you say, "I can't," you teach fear that it is right. Each time you procrastinate or avoid, you give it more power. And so, fear becomes the lens through which you view everything, not the lens of truth, but the distorted lens of what you've been taught to believe. Awakening. When you realize fear is learned and can be unlearned. No one is born fearing judgment. No one is born fearing failure. All of these things were learned over time, and anything learned can be relearned. Awakening begins the moment you realize fear is not you. It is an uninvited guest you've grown accustomed to living with. It is not your essence. It is merely a program installed from the outside world. And if you have the courage to observe it, to question it, you will see that fear cannot stand firm under the light of awareness. It only holds power when you don't recognize it for what it is. Fear is not an inherent instinct. It is something nurtured, and it is also something that can be released. When you realize this, you begin to reclaim control over your life. 2. Anxiety. The invisible enemy residing in every breath. There are enemies with shapes, with footsteps, with recognizable faces, but there is one enemy subtler, more invisible, that does not strike with direct blows, but gnaws at you bit by bit, like a drip of water wearing down a stone, eroding your will and vitality day after day. That enemy has a name: anxiety. Anxiety doesn't arrive with the frightening appearance you might expect. It doesn't shout, it isn't violent, it doesn't force you to pay attention through obvious pain. On the contrary, it slips into every breath, into restless sleep, into the moments when you believe you are at peace. It clings to you without ever speaking aloud, and that is exactly what makes it more dangerous than anything else you've ever faced. What is anxiety? The endless waiting for a threat that never comes. Have you ever felt your whole body tense, your heart racing, your palms sweating, without knowing why? There's no danger nearby, no clear threat, yet your body reacts as though you're standing at the edge of a cliff or being hunted. That is anxiety, a continuous warning about an invisible threat, an undefined peril, always lurking somewhere but never truly arriving. Anxiety doesn't come from the present, it comes from the scenarios your mind creates. The worst case outcomes, distant fears, the what ifs that never actually happen. Anxiety rules over every small decision, every time you postpone a phone call, just because you're afraid you might say the wrong thing, every time you delete a message you've written, afraid of being misunderstood, every time you hold back your true feelings, fearing how others might judge you. Anxiety is not a violent storm that comes once and passes. It is a relentless drizzle, seeping into every corner of life, making even the smallest actions harder than they need to be. You hesitate to step onto the stage, even though you know you're capable. You struggle to say no, even when it's what you need for yourself. You avoid new challenges, not because you don't want them, but because anxiety builds invisible walls that hold you back. Your body knows anxiety, even if your mind denies it. The most terrifying thing about anxiety is, it's not just in your mind, it lives in your body. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your breath shortens, your stomach tightens. All of these reactions occur even as you sit quietly in a safe room. With no real threats around, your body prepares for a danger that doesn't exist because your mind has commanded it to do so. This disconnect between reality and inner sensations wears you down, leaving you always in a defensive state, like a warrior who never gets to rest. Anxiety is the best liar you'll ever meet. Anxiety whispers in your ear, "Be careful, everything might fall apart. Don't try that, you'll fail. It's better not to speak up, they'll think you're foolish." These lies repeat themselves, quietly constructing a mental prison, convincing you that you're weak, that you're not enough, that you must be cautious of everything around you. But the truth is, the dangers anxiety warns you about rarely happen. And if they do, they are never as severe as anxiety makes them seem. The key is to observe, not fight. Have you ever tried to fight anxiety? Tried to ignore it, tried to push it away, tried to pretend you're fine? But the more you fight it, the bigger anxiety grows, because it doesn't need you to fully believe in it. It only needs you to pay attention to it, to react to it, and in doing so, it wins. The key is not to fight anxiety, but to observe it like an outsider. Ask, what is it saying to me? Is there really any danger here? Do I really have to believe it? That act of observation creates distance, a distance wide enough for you to recognize that anxiety is merely a passing wave, not reality. Anxiety is the invisible enemy, residing in every breath, every heartbeat, but only when you refuse to look directly at it. When you observe it under the light of awareness, it no longer controls you. It becomes just a visitor, arriving and eventually leaving. Of course, As your dedicated translation expert for philosophical self-development content, I will ensure that every nuance, structure, and emotional depth of the original text is preserved, leading readers on an introspective journey. Here is your requested translation. Free. The futile battle. When running from fear only makes it stronger. Have you ever noticed, every time you feel afraid, you try everything you can to avoid it? You keep yourself busier to forget it. You entertain yourself, work, and seek distractions to cover up the fear. You convince yourself that you're fine, that the fear is small, insignificant, but in the end, the fear remains. It comes back, sometimes stronger, holding on even tighter, and so, you continue to avoid it. An endless cycle where you become a prisoner of the very emotion you've been trying to escape. Fear doesn't disappear when denied. The more you deny it, the more it grows. The more you avoid it, the more intensely it haunts you. Imagine fear as a lost child. When it cries, if you hold it close, it gradually soothes. But if you scold it, push it away, pretend not to see it, it only cries louder, more frightened, more lost. Fear works the same way. It doesn't need you to accept it fully. It just needs you not to treat it as an enemy. Every time you ignore fear, it doesn't vanish. It only recedes deeper into your subconscious, waiting for its moment to return, bigger, stronger. And when it returns, it's no longer just an emotion. It manifests as physical symptoms, headaches, insomnia, fatigue, tension. Fighting fear only gives it more power. When you treat fear as an enemy, you channel all your energy into battling it. But the more you fight, the more space it takes in your mind. You think facing fear means defeating it, but that is the mistake. Fear doesn't need to be defeated. It needs to be understood, listened to. When you sit with your fear and ask what it's trying to tell you, you begin to untangle the knots that bind you. Fighting fear is a futile battle, because the only adversary in that fight is yourself. Fear is a signal, not an enemy. Fear is not darkness, it's a warning bell. It doesn't show up to destroy you, but to point out something important that's been neglected. When you fear failure, perhaps you're standing at an important threshold, one that asks you to step out of your comfort zone. When you fear judgment, maybe you're trying to live authentically but are afraid no one will understand you. Fear isn't meant to be driven away. It's meant to be noticed, to show you what you're avoiding. When you run, fear chases, but when you stop, it stops too. Think back to the times anxiety overwhelmed you. The more you tried to escape it, the tighter it gripped. But in the moment you let go, allowed yourself to sit with it, feel the full extent of the anxiety, it began to ease. Fear doesn't know what to do when you don't run. It can't keep growing if you meet it head-on without judgment. It weakens when you allow it to exist but don't let it take control. Transformation begins when you accept you are afraid. No denial, no pushing away, no pretending to be stronger. Just tell yourself, I'm afraid, and that's okay. Only when you acknowledge fear as a natural part of being human can you begin to transform it. Fear ceases to be an obstacle. It becomes a guide. It reveals the limits you've set for yourself. It reminds you that behind that fear might lie something crucial you need to step toward. Awaken. Instead of running, sit with your fear. You don't need to be stronger to defeat fear. You just need enough courage to sit with it. Feel where fear resides in your body. Where does it sit? What shape does it take? How does it move? Breathe with it. Observe it. Don't force it to disappear. And you will realize, fear is not a wall. It's a door. Behind that door lies a stronger, freer version of yourself. The battle with fear is the most meaningless fight you'll ever engage in. When you stop fighting, that's when you truly win. Not because you've destroyed fear, but because you stop letting it define you. Certainly, as your expert translator for philosophical self-development content, I will ensure that every detail, structure, and emotional nuance in the original is preserved, leading readers on an introspective journey. Here is your requested translation. 4. Control, an illusion wrapped in a rational disguise. If anxiety is an invisible net tightening around each breath, then control is how you attempt to cut that net, yet instead of freeing yourself, you weave even denser, tighter knots. And this is the greatest paradox. When you believe you are controlling your life, you are in fact tightening the very chains that bind you. Control, the lie society paints as wisdom. We grow up believing that control is a mark of maturity. The one who controls their emotions is rational. The one who controls their plans is successful. The one who controls every situation is strong. But this is merely a rational facade society places over an inner fear. Fear of the unexpected, fear of unforeseen detours, fear of chaos, of change. Control becomes the way you cope with that fear, but like a bird tightening the bars of its own cage for safety. You don't become safer, you drift further from truly living. The illusion of control, when you think you're steering, but you're just afraid to turn. You write endless to-do lists. You try to predict every worst-case scenario. You plan every step, every conversation, every outcome in detail. But the truth is, life never follows your plan. The scenario you imagined rarely unfolds as expected. Each time reality strays from your roadmap, you tighten your grip, plan even more meticulously, anticipate even further. But this only makes you more exhausted, more disconnected from the present moment. You cannot control life. You can only control how you respond to what life brings. Control is a mask for the fear of failure. You control because you fear failure. Fear of embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of facing the unknown. But control doesn't eliminate failure. It only postpones the moment you face it. And when failure arrives, it overwhelms you even more, because you've invested so much belief in your ability to control. Machiavelli's lesson on wisdom, known when to let go. Machiavelli, the master strategist, understood. The one rigid with plans, the one stubbornly clinging to control, is the first to fall when the tides change. True power lies in knowing when to hold on and when to release. Knowing that not everything can be controlled. Knowing how to adapt to circumstances rather than straining against them. Power is not about gripping tighter, it's about discerning what can be controlled and what cannot. Freedom lies in embracing chaos. Chaos is an inevitable part of life. Everything changes. Plans are always subject to disruption. The unexpected will always arise. The more you resist this, the more exhausted and despairing you become. But when you learn to accept, to be flexible, you free yourself from the need to control. You step into life like a dancer moving with the flow, instead of bracing against the current. That's when you are truly free. Awaken. Control is not strength. Letting go is true power. Excessive control is a symptom of fear. Letting go at the right time is a sign of trust. When you dare to release your grip, to let life unfold with all its chaos, to trust that you are strong enough to face whatever comes, you become truly powerful. Not because you control everything, but because you control yourself, even when everything outside changes. Control is an illusion packaged in rational disguise. You don't need to control life to find peace. You only need to know that you are steady enough to stand in the storm without being swept away. And that is true strength. 5. Disconnected from the body. When the mind becomes a prison, there exists a kind of prison where no one chains you inside. Yet you remain there for most of your life. It's not built of concrete walls or iron bars, but of an invisible space constructed from thoughts, anxieties, calculations, where you live inside your mind and forget your body. We learn to live in our heads too early, overthinking everything, analyzing every decision, predicting every possibility. The mind, which is meant to be a tool for processing information, becomes our permanent dwelling place and eventually, our prison. The body, the forgotten companion. As children, you lived fully in your body. You ran, jumped, fell, laughed, cried, every emotion expressed through your body. You knew when you were hungry, tired, happy, or sad, because your body spoke, and you listened. But gradually, you were taught to control yourself, which in reality meant ignoring your body's signals in favor of the mind's rationality. Don't cry, push yourself a little more. Don't show weakness. Your body began to be ignored. You forced it to work when it was tired, silenced it when it hurt, pretended to be okay when it was stressed. And when you stopped listening to your body, it didn't disappear, it just spoke softer, until it had to scream through pain, illness, insomnia, anxiety. The mind, a prison of thought loops. You ruminate endlessly on a problem. You replay the worst-case scenario over and over. You worry about things that haven't happened. Your mind becomes a labyrinth, where every exit leads back to the same fear. The more you think in search of solutions, the deeper you sink into these endless loops. You believe that overthinking will help you control the situation, but in reality, it only takes you further away from the present, further disconnected from yourself. The body always lives in the present, the mind does not. The mind can transport you to the past or hurl you into the future. You may sit here, but your mind is running wild with what-ifs and if-onlys. But the body is always here, now. Your breath is breathing, your heart is beating, the sensation on your skin, the stretch of your muscles, the warmth of the air, all are here, in the present. When you live in your mind, you lose connection with your body. You stop feeling, you stop listening, and you become a victim of your own thoughts. Anxiety and disconnection from the body. Anxiety doesn't just exist in your head, it lives in your muscles, in your shallow breaths, in your clenched stomach, in your trembling hands. But you don't pay attention to your body. You only try to control your thoughts. You argue with yourself. You try to reason everything out. But you forget, your body is bearing the weight of all your thoughts. Awakening. Returning to the body, breaking free from the mind's prison. The solution doesn't lie in thinking more or reasoning deeper. The solution is to return to your body. Take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. Feel your heartbeat, your skin, the weight of your body against the ground. When you connect with your body, you disrupt the mind's looping circuits. You return to the present. You realize that no matter what your mind says, your body is here, alive, existing. And from that moment, the prison of the mind begins to crack. The body doesn't demand explanation, it only needs to be felt. You don't need to understand every emotion. You just need to listen when your body speaks. You just need to dare to pause, dare to feel without judgment, without analysis, because the body doesn't lie. It is your compass, your map, your guide out of the mind's prison. And only when you return to the body can you truly free yourself from repetitive thoughts and endless anxiety. Disconnection from the body is how you lock yourself inside the mind, in the spirals of anxiety, analysis, and fear. But when you dare to return, to feel each heartbeat, each breath, each raw sensation, that is when the prison begins to crumble. And you, for the first time in a long while, truly begin to live. Of course, here is the English translation of your philosophical self-development content, maintaining the exact structure, reflective tone, and emotional depth. 6. The trap of busyness. When productivity becomes a veil for anxiety. There is a kind of anxiety that doesn't show itself through panic attacks or restless, sleepless nights. It hides beneath the surface of constant busyness, endless activity, disguised as diligence, as a journey toward success. But in truth, it is the most sophisticated form of escape, an escape from yourself. Busyness, the appearance of stability, but chaos inside. You fill your schedule with meetings, work, and goals. You take pride in having no spare moment. You feel safe when everything is planned, measured by efficiency and achievements. But behind that mask of productivity, do you ever feel empty? Do you ever realize you are constantly moving, yet getting nowhere? Do you sense, amidst the meetings, projects, and to-do lists, that you're running in circles, avoiding a stillness within? Busyness, at times, is not dedication, it is anxiety's sweetest trap. Working to avoid feeling, you move to avoid facing your fears. You work to silence the inner questions. What am I really living for? Is something missing within me? When your body is exhausted, yet your mind refuses to stop, perhaps you are using productivity as a veil for anxiety. Busyness spares you from hearing the small voice inside, the one that reminds you of emotions you've never faced, wounds you've never healed. False productivity, when doing replaces living. Have you ever felt anxious when idle? When there's nothing to do? Do you feel useless, inadequate, empty? Do you always need a goal, a task to feel worthy? Anxiety is a master of disguise. It knows how to convince you, I'm moving forward, while in reality, you're just spinning in place, avoiding yourself. Work becomes a ritual instead of a journey of growth. You measure yourself by hours worked, projects completed, goals achieved, but deep down, you are avoiding stillness, for in stillness, fear arises, anxiety and the cycle of busyness. The more anxious you feel, the more you work, the more you work, the more you temporarily feel in control of your unease. But then exhaustion creeps in, and anxiety waits just behind the door of every pause. So you push yourself to stay busier. You run faster, but you cannot run forever. And when your body collapses, when your spirit is drained, you realize busyness is not salvation, it is an addiction, a way to postpone facing yourself. Machiavelli and the lesson of pausing. Machiavelli once said, "The wise know when to act and when to observe." Not every moment calls for action. Sometimes, it is the pause that reveals the true nature of the game. Busyness is not a strategy. Sometimes, it is merely a distraction, a way to divert yourself from what truly needs your attention. Awakening. Dare to pause and listen to yourself. Do you dare to sit still, doing nothing, and listen to the voice within? Do you dare to leave a block of time in your day, unplanned, goalless, and see what arises? Because it is in those moments of doing nothing that you truly feel yourself. You hear the anxiety, the fear, the emptiness, but these are invitations to heal, to understand, to release. You cannot heal what you continue to run from. Busyness is a veil that hides anxiety, a sweet trap that makes you believe you're advancing, while in reality, you're spinning in the same circle of your fears. To dare to pause, to slow down, to listen, is the first step to lifting that veil and beginning to truly live, not to do, but to be. In the end, the journey of freeing yourself from anxiety, from control, from the masks of identity is not a battle. It isn't about fighting, resisting, or conquering anything within you. It is simply about letting go. Letting go of the old expectations you once placed upon yourself. Letting go of the illusion that you must control everything to feel safe. Letting go of the frantic pace of life meant to fill the emptiness, yet never allowing you to truly listen to yourself. You don't need to run from fear. You don't need to turn anxiety into an enemy. You only need to pause, observe, feel, accept that every emotion has the right to exist, but no emotion holds the right to control you forever. When you stop long enough to hear your breath, to feel your body, to face the quiet within your mind, you realize that freedom has never left you. It has only been hidden beneath the layers you created. Fear, when looked at directly, begins to shrink. Anxiety, when listened to, transforms into a guiding voice. The mask, when removed, reveals your true face, free, natural, alive. You don't need to do more. You only need to live more authentically. Less running, less pretending, less controlling, just enough courage to stop, to return to yourself, and the healing begins. From that moment on, you are no longer a prisoner of fear. You become the guide of your own life,